Hello folks, welcome to video number 101. This video is on trigonometry graphs. Now I haven't specifically done any trigonometry videos just yet to this point. There will be a section there. Pythagoras and trigonometry has got its own section of videos. But this is something that I need to go into because it's in the graphs topic, and I'm just going to teach you how to deal with these specific sorts of graphs. Now trigonometry is the branch of mathematics that deals with finding missing side lengths and angles in triangles, so right angle triangles and or any triangles for that matter. Sin, cos and tan, or sine, cos and tan are the trig ratios that we are pre-programmed into our calculators, so we don't have to worry too much about what they actually are. And the word asymptotes is I think I mentioned it in a different video, it's the point at which the graph doesn't touch. Okay, so there are three trigonometry graphs that you need to learn. The graphs are useful for solving trigonometric equations within a given range. The sine and the sine and cos graphs bounce between -1 and 1 on the y-axis, and they could go on for infinity on the x-axis, and they repeat every 360 degrees. So they're exactly the same shape, this wave shape that you'll see that I plot in number 1. And the tan graph it goes from -infinity to positive infinity on the y-axis, repeats every 180 degrees, and it's a cubic shape, and it has asymptotes at 90, positive and negative 90, positive and negative 270, and 180 degree increments thereafter that. So let's plot these graphs. The first one I'm going to do is, in number 1, is y equals sine x. So this one will be the sine x one. I'll just label it number 1. There, so you can see that this one is number 1. Right, now normally you'd have the positive, but I've included all the negative in here as well. Right, now what you need to remember is that, and this is how I remember it, you got the 1, not the 1, you got the I of the sine, the word sine, that is like a number 1, all right, and you don't start the graph at number 1, all right, you start it at 0. That's what I was taught, and that is what I've remembered. Okay, so you start it at 0, okay, 0, 0. At 1, you're at 90 degrees. Okay, so we'll plot that point there. And at 180, you're back down at 0. Okay, you could always check on your calculator as well if you had one. You just type in sine of 90 and see what it equals. Sine of 90 would equal 1. All right, and sine of 180 would equal 0. And sine of 270 would equal -1. All right, because we're going down here, and then we come back up again at 360, and then at 450, we're going to go back up to 1, and then down again through 0. So this is the positive graph, positive sine graph. Okay, and then there, right? And normally we'd only see it between the range of 0 and 360 degrees. Okay, but it does go into the negatives as well, and it just repeats that pattern. So we're down at -1 at -90 there, and then back up through, and you plot those points like that, and you get that sine graph wave. Does that. You can try and draw it a little bit nicer than what I've done there. I can't draw it brilliantly. I'm so sorry, it's pretty terrible. Right, but you have a nice smooth curve. Have a look at the next one up here. That's what it should look like. Okay, the first bit that I did was all right. Now the second graph will be the cos graph, which is exactly the same shape. It's just in a different position. Okay, now the cos graph starts at 1 because it's got an O in the middle, which is like the number 0, and that's the opposite thing to 0 is 1. All right, on this scale here, that doesn't make sense. The opposite thing to 0 is not 1, but you know what I mean. All right, so we're starting at 1 instead of starting at 0. So we're going to start there, then we go down through 90, and then down here. So just like the same shape, then back up here, then back down, and then back down. Okay. So this graph is a little bit better in the way that I've drawn that one. And then obviously it's the same shape going through again. All the negatives here. And you just plot those points. And you join them up. Oh, that might not be a bad one. There we go. There's your cos graph. Okay, so sine graph was a bit wobbly and a bit horrible, but the cos graph's a bit better. Okay. And again, normally you'd only see the positive between 0 and 360 there for the cos graph. But I was just demonstrating it goes on for infinity. And these are very useful to learn how to sketch, because you're going to be able to work stuff out from them. All right, that's the point of doing these. The tan graph is a different shape, so this is our third one. So I'll draw that in this one. And basically it's just like a cubic graph shape. So you go up like this, and through 180 you're at 0, and then you just go towards the asymptotes, but you never touch the asymptotes. All right, that line is not touching. If I zoom in on that, it's not touching, I promise. Right, and then through here you'd have normally just that shape there and that shape there, right? Because you don't draw the negative bit. But if you draw in the negative bit, then you're going to go and have the same shape. All right, so we've got this shape here, and it just carries on through, and that would be another asymptote there for minus 270. No, sorry, there. Get rid of that. Another one would be there. All right, so we'd have our graph that goes through like that, and just the repeating pattern is what you've got with a tan graph. Okay, it doesn't really matter. You don't understand what's going on with those as it is at GCSE level. You just need to know the shapes that they make and know how to use them to solve things. Okay, which is what we're going to do in number 2. So in number 2, we're going to use the graph of y equals sine x, which is this first one that I attempted to draw, but we're doing it between the range of 0 and 360 degrees, which would be stated in the question. It's just not in this one. So y equals sine x is the graph, and sine 30 equals a half. Right, now this is a trig value. Later on, when we do trigonometry in more detail, this is a trig value you're going to learn, right, that sine 30 is equal to 1/2, right? But we're going to use that in this graph question to answer this relatively simple question, actually, right? So sine 30 is the angle, and now the x-axis represents the angles, right? Now in between here and here, 0 and 1, halfway would be sine of half, right? Because y is equal to sine x, that's this graph, okay? And all we're doing is replacing that y with a half. So if we go from a half, right, we're going to go across and hit the curve at some point. If we hit that curve and we go down, right, what that answer there is telling us that half is equal to sine 30. We're saying that that angle there is 30. So this difference between 0 and this 30 degrees is 30 degrees, right? There is a difference of 30 there. Now we could carry on that same path and hit the curve again, right? And if we went down, we'd see that that is a difference of 30 between here and here. It's symmetry. It's replicating this gap here. Okay, so that difference is also 30. Right, so that must be sine 150. So sine 150 for A is actually equal to 0.5. Okay, it's the same thing, 0.5. All right, so that's actually a relatively simple thing to understand. All right, that if you just carry on that path, you're going to hit the curve again, right, and it's just going to be the same answer. Okay, sine of 30 is a half and sine of 150 is a half. If you've typed onto a calculator, you would get that answer straight away. Okay. Now, sine x equals minus a half, right? Well, let's go from minus a half and see what we get. So there's minus a half, okay? And we're not getting anything within the range of 0 and 180 to go past that point. And then we hit the curve there, okay? Now, symmetry of the graph, the symmetry of the graph allows us the luxury of knowing that this difference here is also the same as this difference here, 30. So if we add 30 on to this, 180, that's going to be 210 degrees. Okay, so what we know is that sine x equaling minus a half is going to be 210 degrees, but there's also another answer that it could be, and that's carrying on, going up, all right, and seeing that it's 30 less than 360, so 330 degrees. Okay, now that is, like I said, something you don't have to completely fully understand in great detail. It's just knowing how to do that is a good thing, because you're going to pick up some marks on your exam papers. Now I'll move myself over for the third and final question, and this is just a trig graph. It's the Cos graph, the y equals cos x, and we've got to transform it. So if you'd watched the last video where I'd had my pink hair for the first time, you would have noticed that I was transforming the graphs. Okay, so you need to know that you can do that with any graph, and this is my example for this, right? We're combining those two topics, understanding what the Cos graph is and understanding how to transform graphs. So this one could be rewritten, label this graph, y equals cos x plus 2, right? And that means that all the points on the Cos graph are going to go up by 2. Okay, so if I take this point here, and the Cos graph starts at 1, right? 0, 1, right? That one is now going to be up at 0, 3, okay? And then if I take this point here, right, I'm going to go up by 2 units. And I take this point here up by 2 units, and then this point here up by 2 units. And I've got the wave, I just need to replicate the shape. Okay, and that is the answer to the first one. Alright, I just need to label it y equals 2 plus cos x. Alright, so it looks really complicated. Actually, it's really simple. Just move the graph 2 spaces up. And then the second one, we need to do another one here. So we're going to go y equals minus cos x minus 2. So there's 2 things happening to this, right? If you remember from the last video, that negative in front of the function is going to flip it in the x-axis. Alright, so this point will actually become this point here, and this point will become this point here. I could plot those actually. Right, so I'll plot them like that, and then I'll plot this one here, and then this point become this one here. Right, but we're not going to draw those yet because we've also got this minus 2. The whole graph then of that function has to move down by 2 units. So we're going to be here, we're going to be here, and then we're going to be here, we're going to be here. So I'm just going to plot those circles, and that will be that one. Okay, and I hope that all makes sense. So I will label that one y equals minus cos of x minus 2. So there you go. 2 things happened to the graph. We flipped it in the x-axis, and then we moved it down by 2 units. All right, that should all make sense because you would have watched the last video, I'm sure. Very diligent students watching every single thing that I am creating for you, because it will help you, I think. Thanks for watching this one. I hope you watch another one. Take care of yourselves.